I'm Sherrod Brown, your United States Senator. I'm sorry I can't join my colleague, Senator Portman, and all of you today to celebrate the work of the Legal Aid Society in Cleveland. For more than a century, low-income Ohioans who can't afford an attorney have relied on your services. One of the most special nights that Connie and I have had in the last 2 or 3 years is joining you at your dinner and listening to Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor talk about her experiences and connecting with all of us in the audience, the 1,000 or so people there watching and listening to her. Thank you especially for connecting Clevelanders to the resources needed to avoid foreclosure and in elder abuse and to help keep children safe. Thank you also for working to ensure that language barriers are never a barrier to having a person's voice heard in court. You do so much for our communities. We all have a role and a responsibility to make equality and justice accessible for Ohioans who have faced far too much hardship in their lives. For doing your part, I thank you so much.
Good afternoon. I'm Ann Bergen, and I'm president of the Board of Directors for the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland this year.
And my name is Colleen Cotter. She does deserve applause. And my name is Colleen Cotter, and I am the Executive Director of the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. Thank you. On behalf of our Board of Directors and our staff, we want to thank Senator Brown for that very warm welcome from Washington. And we want to welcome you this afternoon to our 2013 annual luncheon and report to the community. We are so delighted that you could join us for this always special afternoon.
And we're honored as well this afternoon to have with us as our keynote speaker, Senator Rob Portman. Senator Portman, welcome, and thank you for joining us. And I'd like to welcome a former Legal Aid Board member, Congressman Louis Stokes, who will be providing an introduction to Senator Portman.
It is indeed very special to hear today from both of Ohio's senators. It is a testament to each of them and to Legal Aid's broad support as we work to ensure justice. Collaboration, partnerships, working together in the pursuit of justice for those who are low income and vulnerable, that is what we do at Legal Aid. That is our mission, indeed our passion. Equal justice under law, the words engraved across the U.S. Supreme Court building in Washington, is what we are about and why we are all gathered here today. But we do not do it alone. In fact, at the tables around you are our friends and partners from almost every institution, sector, and agency we work with to ensure justice for our clients. The courts, law firms, our wonderful volunteer attorneys, social service agencies, hospitals, schools, former clients, foundations, and elected representatives. Legal Aid's community-wide collaboration brings together many hearts and many hands.
And so, our plan for today's luncheon is to briefly introduce you to the work of the Legal Aid Society and update everyone on our 108th year just passed. You'll hear from several individuals who demonstrate our long-term impact and who are now giving back to us and to our community. Then, we'll recognize some leaders who are leaving our Board of Directors this year, and we'll announce this year's staff awards. Capping this afternoon, Congressman Stokes will provide an introduction to Senator Portman for his keynote remarks, and we'll have you back on your own quest for justice by 1:15.
As Ann mentioned, the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland is 108 years old. We were founded in Cleveland in 1905 with offices in the Williamson Building, where 200 Public Square, the Huntington Building, now rises. We are the 5th oldest legal aid society in the country. Today, we are a strong civil rights law firm. We have a staff of 70, including 45 attorneys. We also engage over 1,600 volunteer attorneys and over 200 volunteer law students. We are one of 134 independent legal aid societies serving every county in the United States. In Northeast Ohio, the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland serves clients in 5 counties, from Lorain in the west through Cuyahoga, Lake, Geauga, to Ashtabula in the east. Each of the 134 legal aid societies is funded by local contributions and grants, by statewide grants in Ohio from the Ohio Legal Assistance Foundation, and by the National Legal Services Corporation. When Congress established the Legal Services Corporation in 1974, it found and declared that there is a need to provide equal access to the system of justice in our nation for individuals who seek redress of grievances, and that providing legal assistance to those who face an economic barrier to adequate legal counsel will serve best the ends of justice.
In 1905, Cleveland was an industrial boomtown. Waves of immigrants doubled our population every 20 years. Those immigrants, whether from the South, out west, or overseas, faced a harsh new world in our city. Legal aid's clients' most frequent concerns were garnishment, debt, rent problems, and desertion. A century later, debt and housing still lead that list. Loan sharks have been replaced by payday lenders, and legal aid's clients' top issues today concern economic security, foreclosure, slumlords, violence in the home, and accessing education. Sadly, some things have not changed, but society does change, and our work changes along with it, and it includes today veterans' benefits and concerns, reentry problems, custody, immigration, and even tax issues.
This past year, we served nearly 24,000 adults and children. We handled 9,478 cases. In our 5 counties, approximately 370,000 people live in poverty and are eligible for our services. Over 126,000 of them are children. These are families of low-wage workers, the elderly, the disabled. The numbers are daunting. We must turn away fully half, 50%, of the people who come to us for help. As you can imagine, that is one of the hardest things our staff must do. The limits of our resources is the bad news, but the good news is that for the clients we represented in 2012, we prevented eviction for 95% of our clients. We removed barriers to education for 87% of the kids we helped. We secured health insurance for 96% of our clients, saved 70% of homes from foreclosure, and increased safety for 98% of our clients. And this is important. We increased our clients' assets, increased their income, and decreased their debt by a combined $27 million.
This, in numbers, is the power of justice. We are very proud of our attorneys and our staff and the skill and success of their work. Would our staff please stand? We all acknowledge your skill, your dedication, and success. Thank you guys, you're great. And our volunteer attorneys handled over 1,300 cases last year. Nothing could more vividly demonstrate this community's commitment to justice. Would our volunteer attorneys please stand so we can thank you for your indispensable commitment to justice. As a volunteer attorney myself, I can say that the personal rewards and satisfaction of volunteering, of making a real difference in real people's lives, is beyond words. Our name, the Legal Aid Society, is simple and direct. It says what we do. We use the power of the law to help those who are poor and vulnerable. The law and our attorney skills are powerful tools. But if the power of the law is our means, it is not our ends or our goal. The outcome we seek, as Colleen mentioned, is something much larger. It's justice. The law is a noble and powerful tool with which to ensure that the poor and vulnerable have the same rights, the same treatment, and the same high-quality legal services that all of us in this room expect for our families, our communities, and indeed for ourselves.
And let me add a cruel irony to what Anne has just said. Being poor means far more legal problems than anyone in this room is likely to know. Being poor means a lifetime of unavoidable debt, substandard housing, foreclosures, trouble accessing credit, uncaring bureaucracies, to say nothing of unscrupulous landlords and payday lenders and hordes of others who prey on the powerless. We at Legal Aid work to make sure that the powerless get a fair shake, that justice is not just pretty paintings and noble courthouses with marble columns, but something real for everyone, rich and poor.
Justice secured can mean simple things. An autistic child receiving her special education plan to which she has a right, ensuring a landlord repairs a rusty leak, or reversing a disabled vet's denial of benefits. Justice delivered for our clients is the removal of seemingly insurmountable obstacles that block nothing more glamorous than a normal, productive life of contribution and stability.
Just as troubles have a domino effect for the poor, so too does justice. A few quick examples. When we keep a family in their home, we raise the odds of their children finishing school and becoming productive, contributing members of our community. When we helped Doug, a long-haul truck driver, keep the rig he was buying from his employer, this was after the employer fired him and kept the $5,000 Doug had already paid towards the truck. We are helping him build a business, strengthen his community, and more importantly, take charge of his life. When we helped Beth get a 30-year-old misdemeanor conviction expunged, for the first time, she could get a job that paid a living wage. Not headline news, but the power of the law allowed Beth to build her life. Now that's priceless. We also worked this last year with a client who was a single father of a son with a mental disability. His son could not be left alone and had no alternative caretaker during the day. Nevertheless, the father was denied unemployment benefits because he had to turn down a day job that he was offered, a catch-22. His legal aid attorney, Amanda Davis, got his disqualification overturned because of his need to care for his son. The power of the law got him his benefits, and as important, allowed him to now look for a nighttime job and care for his son. One last example. Last year, a longtime volunteer, Carl Kammer, discovered that the mortgage a bank was trying mightily to foreclose against our client wasn't even in our client's name, although that didn't stop the bank for a while. It was complicated, but Carl finally got the bank to settle. If the bank had won, our client would be homeless. The power of the law can be earth-shaking in very small places.
In 1947, Eleanor Roosevelt wrote in one of her My Day syndicated newspaper columns, "Justice cannot be for one side alone, but must be for both." That quote, which many of you may remember from our holiday card last year, could well be our operating principle. Our judicial system cannot be a system of justice unless everyone involved has a voice, has a right to be heard, can tell their story, and can present their case. When we represent a client, we ensure that the entire system works as it's intended. We bring justice to life.
Last November, Jim Sandman, the head of the Legal Services Corporation in Washington, the entity I mentioned earlier set up by Congress to fund legal aids, spoke at the City Club here. Jim offered a quote from Justice Lewis Powell that encapsulates what Ann and I are saying. It comes from the same place that Mrs. Roosevelt spoke. "Equal justice under law," Justice Powell wrote, "is not merely a caption on the facade of the Supreme Court building. It is perhaps the most inspiring ideal of our society. It is fundamental that justice should be the same in substance and availability without regard to economic status." As Jim noted in his City Club talk, the framers of our Constitution gave first priority to establishing justice in our nation's quest to form a more perfect union. As the words we all know say, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, secure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense." I don't think their ordering was an accident, Jim added. They recognized that a well-functioning and accessible system of justice is essential to social stability. Ours must be a system of justice open to all, in which everyone feels treated with dignity and believes that their rights are respected. Otherwise, there is only a burning sense of injustice and hopelessness, and that condition is the opposite of domestic and personal tranquility.
And so, our road ahead is clear. Establish justice, strengthen individuals, and strengthen our communities through the power of the law. Colleen mentioned the justice gap here in Northeast Ohio between those we serve and those in need. While nationally, more than 61 million Americans live in poverty and are eligible for legal aid services. There's much work to be done.
Our final point, to chart our way, we have just completed our new strategic plan. Our goals are familiar: improve safety and health, promote education and economic stability, secure decent, affordable housing, ensure the justice system and government entities are accountable and accessible. This is not dramatically different from 1905. And to that list, add empowerment. The very act of realizing that one does have rights can empower one to secure them. Not always successfully, but the knowledge that you have a right is liberating. Empowerment means providing people with the knowledge and the tools they need to resolve problems on their own, so they know they have a voice and a way to use it. This is justice, yes, at its most real, basic, kitchen table level. It all comes down to our new tagline: rights, dignity, justice. Simple, clear, direct, just like our name. Rights, dignity, justice. Working together with your support, with the help of each and every one of you here today, that is what we do every day. Thank you.
I came to legal aid in 1995 when I was a college student. I was married with a young son in a difficult relationship, and I needed to get into a better place. I went to legal aid because that was my only option. I didn't have a job and I didn't have any money to be able to afford legal assistance. Going in, I just wasn't sure where things were going or what the future really held for me. I met with my legal aid attorney the first time, and that was a turning point in my life. That was probably the first time that I had ever considered law school as a possibility.
The structure of the board of directors is 2/3 attorneys and 1/3 client representatives. So we have a wonderful mixture, and we all work very well together.
I'm a community representative. I've been on the board for 8 years now.
Legal Aid, as an organization, is very, very in touch with the everyday person and willing to learn as much as they can to do the best job they can provide.
We're out there in the community, we're living out there with these people, we're listening to them, we're talking to them, and we're bringing it back and letting them know this is what's going on. This is what's holding people down. These are the issues people are dealing with. And this is what we think you need to do to empower these people.
Today I'm an associate attorney with Peterson and Ibold, and I focus primarily on domestic relations. The most rewarding thing about the work that I do now is being able to represent clients who are in the same situation that I've been through. For these people, this is a situation that it's their life. These are the most important moments of their lives, and the emotions are strong. And it's an important thing to have someone to help you through that.
Sometimes I don't feel that I've done enough. I can't get the word out enough, but I am very proud to have represented my community on this wonderful board.
Even though my tenure with the board is done, I'm not done. They have inspired me, and I thank the board for the opportunity that they gave me by serving on the board.
There's a great need to keep these doors open.
There are people who are in all kinds of situations who, at that particular moment, for whatever reason, they're in a difficult position and they just need some help.
Legal Aid is a viable organization that is needed for the community to help clients move on, to help clients into a better life.
My heroes are my legal aid attorney is one of them for sure, and people who donate money to legal aid so they can continue their mission and provide the services to clients.
The client story you heard in that video is very special to me. You see, before I started my practice in 1998, and long before I served on the board for Legal Aid Society, I was a staff attorney at Legal Aid. Karen, who you met in the video, was one of my very first clients, and I was her attorney. I'm humbled and so proud to practice alongside her now that our paths have crossed again as colleagues and member of the bar. And again, that her story shares with all of us just the satisfaction of knowing you made a difference in one person's life is really all it takes. So thank you, Karen, for sharing that story. Karen's story also highlights how working together with your support, we can find success for our clients and for our community. Now, I'd like to turn to two of our board members who you just met by video, Michelle Wilkerson-Gary and Barbara Ledbetter. Michelle and Barbara will be leaving our board this year after serving their terms for us. Michelle and Barbara represent an invaluable aspect of our board of directors. They are our community representatives. Congress, through its authorization of Legal Service Corporation, requires that 1/3 of our board members be attorneys, 2/3 be attorneys, and 1/3 be representatives from the low-income populations that we serve. In that role, Barbara and Michelle, have an essential and valuable dual mandate role. First, like all board of directors for not-for-profits, we rely on them to guide, lead, and strengthen our board through their wise counsel and their commitment to our mission. But secondly, our community representatives make sure that we are indeed serving the low-income populations and poverty populations in our region, and we are doing so in the very best way we can. Michelle, who was nominated for our board by the Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless, was homeless herself at one point. She has been a passionate and articulate voice for our community, and she is also a full-time straight-A student and actress at Karamu House. Barbara is an equally passionate and persuasive voice for legal aid and advocate in our community. Barbara was nominated to the legal aid boards by Metro Health Center for Community Health. Barbara first came to legal aid when her beautiful daughter Tila, then 7, was in need of special education classes, but nobody would listen until Barbara came to legal aid. Just the presence of legal aid made all the difference, Barbara has said. Now, I would add a third unofficial mandate that Barbara and Michelle fulfill. Along with our other community representatives, they educate the rest of the board in direct and personal ways of the needs of the low-income and vulnerable in Northeast Ohio. We attorneys, as caring and thoughtful as we are, we need that reality check. Michelle and Barbara, would you please stand so that we can express our appreciation to your dedication to justice and your community. We will miss you, but we bet you won't be far away. Now, let's turn to one of our proudest moments of these annual events, our staff awards. You can learn more about these awards and our recipients on page 2 of the program. We are grateful for the support of the Alan Modorsky Memorial Fund and the Fred J. Ball Foundation, who help support these awards. Would our 2 award winners please stand when their names are called? First, the Claude E. Clark Award, named for a legal aid director from 1919 to 1956. Mr. Clark helped build Ohio's essential consumer protection structure by ensuring the passage of a number of consumer protection laws. The Claude E. Clark Award, given for outstanding service, is presented to Shelley O'Carey. And the C. Lionel Jones Lifetime Achievement Award. The award honors the legacy of a legal aid director of 37 years, C. Lionel Jones. He has been an inspiration to many of us through his dedication to legal aid and to Cleveland. The Lifetime Achievement Award this year goes to a colleague and friend of mine who brings the qualities of inspiration and dedication, our Deputy Director, Thomas Malakar. Now, my last responsibility of the afternoon, and a great pleasure it is to introduce Congressman Louis Stokes. Last year, Congressman Stokes retired after his term on our board, but long before that, and still today, he is an unparalleled friend to legal aid, helping us in countless ways, both here and in Washington. Congressman Stokes, it is a great pleasure indeed to welcome you once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Colleen Cotter, Anne, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I want to thank you, Anne, for the very kind words of introduction. I appreciate it very much. As always, I'm delighted to be with my former board colleagues and friends in the Legal Aid Society, and especially so at this annual gathering celebrating your most essential and vital work for the people of Northeast Ohio. Now, it may seem odd to some of you that I, of all people, would be introducing Senator Rob Portman. After all, we are so different. We are poles apart. He's from Cincinnati, and I'm from Cleveland. He roots for the Bengals, I root for the Browns. He cheers for the Reds, and I'm an Indian fan. The truth is that I'm delighted to welcome Senator Rob Portman on behalf of the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. I think most of you know how important legal aid is to me. I fought for it in the Congress, and I served on the board of this Legal Aid Society. Senator Rob Portman also cares about what legal aid does, not only here in Northeast Ohio, but legal aid programs across the country. He sees the importance of legal aid's public-private partnership and how that leverages great benefit to our entire community. Senator Rob Portman understands how legal aid helps ensure shelter, safety, and economic security for those most in need. And further, he appreciates the connection that legal aid makes to create a healthier community for all of us. He has a well-deserved reputation of being one of the most friendly and professional members of the United States Congress, reputation for being hardworking, and known for his willingness to work across the aisle to get important legislation enacted. On numerous occasions, when he and I served together as members of the House, we worked together to pass legislation benefiting our state. As a matter of fact, the last bill I passed in the House was a bill that he and I co-sponsored, giving the National Park Service the authority to be able to collect and preserve all of the historical Underground Railroad sites throughout America relating to slavery in our country. Our speaker has had an extraordinary career. He is a native Ohioan. He was educated at Dartmouth College, where he majored in anthropology, and as a graduate also of the University of Michigan Law School. He worked briefly as an associate White House counsel under President George H.W. Bush. He also served as Deputy Assistant and Director of the White House Office of Legislative Affairs. Beginning in 1994, he served 6 terms in the United States House. In 2005, President George W. Bush named him U.S. Trade Representative. Less than a year later, in 2006, President Bush nominated Rob to be Director of the Office of Management and Budget, and in 2010, he was elected to the United States Senate. The personal friendship, the respect and admiration that Rob and I share was further nurtured when both of us, upon our retirement, became colleagues once again at the law firm of Squire Sanders. Obviously, some Squire Sanders people here. Now, I began this introduction by saying how different we are. Rob has developed a secondary specialty used and useful only during other people's elections as a stand-in at Republican debate preparations. Senator Portman has become an expert at impersonating the views and mannerisms of Democrats in Republican debate preparations. He has pretended to be Al Gore for George W. Bush debate prep in 2000, Hillary Rodham Clinton for Rick Lazio in 2000, Joe Lieberman for Dick Cheney in 2000, John Edwards for Cheney in 2004, and he has pretended to be President Barack Obama twice for John McCain in 2008 and Mitt Romney in 2012. But today, ladies and gentlemen, we have the real Rob Portman, not pretending to be anybody but himself. And I'm honored and delighted to present to you our own senator from Ohio, Rob Portman.
Thank you, Lou. Wow. So I've never played Lou Stokes before, but I'm thinking about it now. After that great introduction, that took a lot of time and thought. He's obviously retired. So there is only one Lou Stokes. I have made some jokes about him because I come to Cleveland, you know, I go by buildings named after him and sometimes his brother, although I think you've now eclipsed him with your number of awards and buildings. And this town just loves you, Lou, and there's a reason for it. I did serve in Congress with Lou, and there was no finer gentleman that I have served with in my, 15 years now, representing our state in the United States Congress and the Senate. No finer gentleman than Lou Stokes. I was privileged to work with him on legislation. I was also privileged to serve as his colleague at Squire Sanders during my interim period between serving in the executive branch and running for the Senate. But most of all, I'm just honored to call him a friend. And he has been a great friend of this institution, not just legal aid here in Cleveland, where he has played a special role, but nationally. He has been a leader over the years, and he does give me good advice. And I'm sure he will continue to, which will all be to the benefit, Colleen, of legal aid. There's so many other friends here today, and I hesitate to recognize some, but I just have to, in addition to Congressman Stokes, and one is the guy who asked me to come here today. That's Dick Pogue. And, of course, Dick's made a few contributions to Northeast Ohio himself. I counted it up, Dick. You've been practicing law now for 6 decades, and he tells me he has 2 or 3 more to go. But what a neat guy, and another one of my mentors. Congrats to the team here. I got a chance to see the whole staff because they gathered for a photograph before lunch, and relatively small staff doing an amazing amount of work, aiding volunteers doing their work as well. And congratulations to Michelle and Barbara for your board service. I will tell you, you will continue to hear from both of them, having met them. And in particular, I think Michelle is going to give you some advice. She has already given me some advice on Syria. I won't tell, don't worry. But what a great opportunity for you both, but also for legal aid, and that relationship I know will continue. And to Tom and to Shelley, of course, congratulations on your awards today. Anne has this unique background. I mean, that she was a legal aid attorney and continues to do volunteer work. I told her Colleen must love having her as a board chair, where maybe sometimes it's harder, because she actually knows what's going on here, you know, and that's great for all of you who are stakeholders, who are invested here. So thank you, Ann and Colleen, for your commitment. There's so many others here. U.S. Attorney Steve Dettelbach's here, it's over there, and he does a good job on a lot of these issues legal aid intersects with. I've worked with him on human trafficking, including the legislation that we've worked on in the Senate, but also on other issues, like prisoner reentry. I saw my longtime friend Rob Frost is here from Tucker Ellis, another big supporter of legal aid. Pat Dugan's here, another Squire Sanders colleague of Lou's and mine. Dennis Torres is here. Now, Dennis is the public defender for the Northern District of Ohio. He told me today that given the fact that the other districts have acting only, he is the he is the public defender for Ohio right now. And we went to law school together at some school up north. I can't remember the name of it. When I'm in Columbus, I never talk about that, as you can imagine. But we have worked out something today where all my law school stories are now subject to the attorney-client privilege. So don't even try to ask him. It was good to see Senator Brown on video. I've missed him over the break. We've been on recess over the last few weeks, and this sort of eases me back into session together with Sharon, just seeing him on video. And again, it's also an indication of the broad support that this organization has. Wow, fifth oldest, one of the largest still, and by the way, there are 134 legal aid societies around the country, so to be the fifth oldest is saying a lot for Cleveland. As Colleen talked about, 25,000 people helped, over 9,000 cases. Helping families stay in their homes, she talked about. I love that because she's right, it's not just about the legal issue with eviction or foreclosure, it's about giving those families the ability to be contributing members of society and productive citizens by letting them have their homes, have their health care, deal with their immigration problems, deal with, as Ann said, their tax issues, which is more and more complicated for people at every income level. And our veterans, I think that is really great what they're doing, particularly with some of our returning veterans from Afghanistan and Iraq who are having a tough time. A lot of you in this room are volunteers, 1,600 volunteer lawyers, it's amazing. And Lou's right, it's a public-private partnership, and you're leveraging the resources of all those people and all those firms. I think it's a great experience for the lawyers. I did this as a young lawyer. I was involved in what we called Volunteer Lawyers for the Poor. One, it's satisfying because you're helping people who are truly in need. Second, of course, it's your professional responsibility, I think, as a lawyer to do that and to be engaged in some way. For some people, it's maybe more financial or helping with the society in other ways on the board. But for others, the ability to fulfill that responsibility we all have as lawyers. And third, I think you learn a lot. I was an international trade lawyer at the time, and they threw me into a litigation matter where I was probably not well suited to the task, but I had to learn it, and I think in many law firms that's true, where you get particularly younger lawyers coming along who agree to take on some of these cases. It really stretches you. And so I recommend it strongly to young people I meet who are in law firms to get involved with legal aid, to take on what are sometimes some very challenging clients. Let's not sugarcoat it for the staff attorneys who are here, and volunteer lawyers sometimes it's tough, right, Tom? But it's a great experience. So I hope that the firms who are represented here continue to encourage it and push it. I think it's good for the community, but also good for those lawyers. I know it's easy to beat up on lawyers, and as a recovering one myself, it's tough on me sometimes. In fact, it's gotten so bad that I can't even tell lawyer jokes anymore. I can't tell them because lawyers don't think they're very funny, and non-lawyers don't think they're jokes. Sorry, I had to throw that in. Just one little legal. But 1,600 people, again, that is really impressive. And you know, what you're doing is, as we saw here earlier, you're ensuring equal justice for all. So standing up for someone who doesn't have the ability to do it on their own, when the powerful takes advantage of the powerless, you're there, fighting back for folks. And the staff's really important, as Colleen will tell us, but the volunteers are key too. And fortunately, a lot of lawyers do understand this privilege of being a lawyer comes with some responsibility as well. And by the way, they tell me, an American approach. In other words, in other countries, there are very few lawyers that volunteer their time. And it kind of goes to, I guess, what de Tocqueville told us about America way back in the 1830s. Remember, he came here from Europe and said, wow, this is an unusual country. Everybody helps one another, all these civic organizations. And that wasn't true in France at the time, or for that matter, in Europe as a whole. And it's continued. And that is the strength of our country, ultimately, isn't it? That we pull together. De Tocqueville said, the health of a democratic society may be measured by the quality of the functions performed by private citizens. And in America, he saw people helping their neighbors, looking out for each other, helping each other with a hand up. And that's ultimately what the people in this room are doing by supporting legal aid. That legacy of philanthropy and service, again, is still strong. And here's a couple stories that were shared with me. Lisa Odom, for 18 years, was physically and mentally abused by her husband. And when she said to him, I'm leaving, he threatened to kill her. Legal aid stepped in. You know, she went to the authorities and they said, well, you know, we hear this sort of stuff all the time. You have to work it out. Through legal aid, she was granted a divorce, full custody of her minor children, and was able to get her life back on track. That's a specific story. Andrew Field, Gulf War veteran with a disability that rendered him unable to hold down a job, didn't know how to get through his life, didn't know how to pay his bills, didn't know how to deal with his disability claim and how to push that through the system. Legal aid stepped in. And it was because of legal aid that Andrew was able to keep a roof over his head, pay those bills, and get his life back on track. So again, someone who had served his country, but when he got back found that he couldn't serve himself, was helped by the people in this room. So those are just two of the countless examples of the people that you're helping by supporting this cause, and over the last year, many successes. This doesn't mean that there isn't also a role beyond the private sector and the volunteer lawyers and the staff attorneys here supported through both public and private dollars. There's also a need for good laws. And you hear a lot these days about how Washington is dysfunctional. It's hard for me to argue the other case, except to say there are some things getting done, and there's some people in this room who have been very involved on some of those issues, and they do relate to the work that's being done here. If you are helping people in poverty, you tend to see the connection to substance abuse, mental health issues, certainly homelessness, recidivism, we talked about earlier, human trafficking. All those issues are issues that you come across. And I will tell you there is some bipartisanship there. On substance abuse, there is legislation that Lou Stokes and I worked on back in 1996 called the Drug-Free Communities Act. Charlie Rangel was one of my original co-sponsors on that bill. And so Republicans and Democrats got together, and now that has helped thousands of coalitions, including 4 here in the Cleveland area, one in Cincinnati that I founded and was chair of for 9 years. We can look at adolescents' drug abuse and say it's gone down about 30%, partly because of the work of prevention, education, and treatment. That's up for reauthorization, and we're looking for help, and it'll be bipartisan. There is work being done on reentry here in Cleveland that is just unbelievable. For those of you who are involved in it already, you probably know that here in Cleveland, we have one of the model programs around the country. The Cuyahoga Office of Reentry is really leading the way. Luis Vasquez, who I don't think is here today, but who's on the Reentry Advisory Committee that I have as Executive Director of that office, But another idea that sprung up on a bipartisan, really nonpartisan basis, this was after Lou Stokes left, but his successor, Stephanie Tubbs Jones, was the original co-sponsor with me and 2 other members of that legislation. And it's being used well here in Ohio. It's also up for reauthorization, so anything you can do to help to get that reauthorized is important. But what it does is it says if people are coming out of prison, rather than giving them a clean shirt and $5 in their pocket and a bus ticket, let's give them some help, because what happens is there is this revolving door, and this is where legal aid ends up stepping in a lot. But over half of those people getting out of the system, the ex-offenders, are back in the system within 3 years. And that affects all of us as taxpayers, clearly affects the community and the crimes they commit. So it's money well spent. The Second Chance Act grants, again, here in Ohio and in Northeast Ohio in particular, are working. Our recidivism rate in Ohio has gone down by 11% since 2005. In other states, also double-digit recidivism reductions. We can do a lot more. Places where this is really being done intensively here in Ohio, including here in Northeast Ohio, the recidivism rates are even lower. We're seeing, instead of 50%, rates like 10, 15%, and that's remarkable. So there are some good things going on, and sometimes they don't get as much play. I think government does have a role to play, and there are things that can and should be done in those areas and others that help the work that the folks are doing here. But ultimately, and I go to what Ann and Colleen said earlier about the fact that 50% of the folks who are looking for help, who are living in poverty, cannot get access because of the limits in terms of the resources available. Ultimately, a stronger economy and better jobs, better paying jobs, rising wages can have more impact than anything, can't it? And stronger families, as we said. A great philosopher, Bono of the band U2, not only wrote a great song called Beautiful Day and a few others, but he also said recently something that sort of caught my attention. He said, the private sector is key. He said, and this is a guy who, by the way, is, devoted his life, other than writing good songs, to poverty, to fighting poverty, not just in the United States, but globally, and been very engaged. His quote recently was, "Job creators and innovators are just the key, and aid is just a bridge." And I think he's right. The best aid is a job. The best help is to have a growing economy and to have the opportunity to have you and your children have a more productive life. And that's where I think we do have dysfunction in our government. I don't think we're addressing those fundamental issues. We're addressing some of the symptoms in a more effective way. And there's more to be done. I know there are differences of opinion as to how to get there, but ultimately the way to have safer, healthier communities is by having a growing economy and having that economic opportunity. I today met with College Now, which is one of Cleveland's great organizations. It's like Legal Aid. They sort of started early, and now cities around the country are trying to emulate what they're doing. But their success rate is terrific of getting high school kids prepared for college, getting into college, and then significantly keeping them in school. The retention rate, unfortunately, is a real problem, and this goes to our economic issues we talked about. But these should not be partisan issues either. And this is where we have to figure it out, whether it's education and worker retraining, whether it's smart regulations. We need regulations, but we've got to have them make sense for our economy. I also met with a company earlier today that's having real trouble with the regulators because there's so many regulations and permits are so hard to get, and we don't want to create so much red tape and bureaucracy here in this country that investment goes elsewhere, which is what's happening often. Our tax code doesn't work. We have a real need to deal with our energy issues. Some of you know there's an energy efficiency bill that I authored that's on the floor when we get back. We need to do much more in terms of energy efficiency, but also producing more energy to keep our costs down. There are things that we're not doing that could be bipartisan that are not. And I must say, dealing with the debt and deficit. This is one where Colleen has to deal with every day because there's pressures on the budget, whether it's sequestration or whether it's what's going to come if we don't deal with this huge unsustainable debt at historic levels. It relates to having that, again, that environment for success and a stronger economy and better jobs. This is where I don't see the bipartisanship, and we need to figure out how to find common ground. In the last 3 weeks, I've been to 25 counties. Lou and I were just talking about this. He was glad he represented a little smaller area. But he was everywhere when he was in office, and that's my job, and I've talked to people at every business level and every walk of life, and we haven't turned the corner. You know, in some of our cities we're doing better, but still we have in Northeast Ohio, you know, unfortunately, relatively high unemployment again, and we're struggling. And so these are things that we need to focus on as a country, and I'm hopeful that this September we'll make some progress on some of this, but ultimately, for a stronger economy with more jobs, rising income, and to be able to help the good work you do every day, to cut down on that waiting list and to be able to provide help to everyone, this is something we also need to devote ourselves to. How do we figure out how to deal with the issues of not just weak economic growth, but growing disparity in terms of incomes, and that's another focus that does directly affect the work of this great organization. But no matter what happens, there will always be a need for what you do, and a pressing need for it. So today we come together to celebrate the successes of the last year and to look forward with this great team of volunteers and staff to helping others truly be able to live up to our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, our notion of equal justice for all. Congratulations on, again, a great year as we rededicate ourselves to the cause of service and look ahead. I wish you all Godspeed, and thanks for letting me come today.
Thank you, Senator Portman. Thank you for joining us today. Have a great afternoon.